Take a look at some of these arrays here today, and we're going to take a look at different ways that we can look at multiplication problems and products. So don't forget that when we're dealing with, or when you're dealing with an unknown, usually we put in a variable, but don't forget that we have two numbers. When we multiply them together, we call those factors. And those two numbers are factors, and this one is called a product. So your answer that we're looking for here is a product. And today we're going to explore on how to show your thinking for this particular problem string. I'm going to demonstrate to you fours, but your actual work today is going to be done with sixes. So any way that you want to think about sixes is a good way. So if we take a look at 4 times 10, this first one here, you could think of this in many different ways. You could think of skip counting by fours, 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20, 24, 28, and 32, 36, and then 40. That would be the 10th number out of the group. Or you could simply just count by tens if you wanted to. 10, 20, 30, 40, because it really means 4 times 10. But really what we want to do is when we look at these, we want to think of them as kind of building a multiplication equation. We want to build a multiplication equation with this particular equation. So we're going to build several of them. So what we'll do first is we're going to take a 4 times 10. And to make a 4 times 10, we could simply just draw an array of what we think that might look like. This could be 4, this could be 10, and we know that that's going to be, 4 times 10, which in this case is 40. And you could think of that as, like I said before, you could skip count by tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, which is probably the most efficient way that most students would do it. And then if we take a look down here, we have a 4 times 4, and in this case we could simply just build another array, which this one happens to be equal sides of an array, which would be a square. And in this case you can figure out 4, 8, 12, 16, or if you wanted to, you could think of it as a number line, and you could count 4, 8, 12, 16, adding 4 each time. That's another way to think about it as well. So as you can see, I'm going to think about adding some more onto this array over here. So let me erase this thinking here so I can show you what I mean. So if I wanted to take 4 times 4 and I wanted to add something to it, I could add 4 times 4, and then I could add more arrays to it and make it a lot longer. Let me show you what I mean. So my next problem is a 4 times 14. So when I'm thinking, I could continue counting by fours if I wanted to. So I could go back to my 4, 8, 12, and so on, and continue to add. Or I could do my simple adding, and that might be fine and well, and you'll probably get the answer. But remember, we want to think about efficiency. So what I'd like you to think about is I'd like you to think about that 4 times 10 that we started out with, and then that number and how it relates to the ones place value. If you notice this one here in the top one, the ones place value has a value of 0. And this one down here has a value of 4. So it's really what we're doing is we're taking 4 times 10, and then we're going to add that 4 to it. So what we'll do is I'm going to show you how to do that as an array. So one way to think about this is you could simply start by adding your 4 times 10. Right? So I'm going to build a 4 times 10. Here's a 4 times 10. Okay, and we said earlier we know that that was 40 to begin with. So now all we have to do is add another 4 to that. And when we add a 4 to that, we're going to add 16 to that because we know that 4 times 4 is 16. So really what we've done here is we've taken 4 times 10 and we're adding another 4 times 4 to it because this would be placed in that 4 here. So then we actually made 2 easier multiplication equations to figure out a very big equation of 4 times 14. And this can be done with much, much larger numbers as well. And it could be done simply like that. So if you're thinking number line and counting 14 times, it's good, but it's not as efficient as this one. This one is super duper efficient because we already have facts that we know that we can break up and add those two together. We know that 10 times 4 is 40, and we know that 4 times 4 is 16. And when we add those two numbers together, a 40 and a 10 is a 50, and then a 0 and a 6 is a 6, and we know that that answer is 56. So now your goal today is to try the same thing, only with a value of 6, and adding 6 times 10 and 6 times 4 and then a 6 times 14 and see how it works for you.